Welcome to the Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. This is a weekly podcast which looks at every aspect of something which has or will at some point affect us all. And that is grief. Whether you've lost a loved one or about to lose someone you know, or perhaps you're simply trying to help someone navigate their grief and don't know where to start or what to say, then perhaps this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll be bringing you different stories and experiences of loss, love, hope, and at times humour. Writer, producer and composer Karl Broderick is one half of the duo behind the Stadium Panto, which will... Oh, yes, you are. Of course, the other half is his husband of over 31 years now.
33 years.
33?
33 years. Yeah, 33 and a third, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well, not married all that long, but all that time, but together.
You're together that long.
Yeah.
And given your I suppose, your job description, like, you know, that's incredible.
Yeah, people constantly say, how do you work? How do you work together?
Yeah.
And it just sort of does work, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of kill each other a little bit, but that's to be.
Yeah, that's part of the...
And sometimes I'll go home and I'll say to him, like, you talk to me that way and you wouldn't talk to an employee or a business partner that way. You can't just talk to me because I'm your husband.
I'm moving out.
Yeah.
Now, you've been together over 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you are known to be together, happy, smiley, incredibly warm. And yet there is so much loss behind that we know Alan has been through, but also you've lost your mum, you've lost your dad, you lost your granny and your childhood friend Michelle as well when she was 21.
Yeah, you know, actually the funny thing is, like, with you starting with Alan, I guess I never had to do those things alone in a way, so I guess that's why I'm still standing and still somewhat okay and still managed to, you know, build a career and keep going. And the same with Alan. Sometimes he does say to himself, or to me, he'll say, will it hit me one day? Will I just, like, fall down? Because Alan's more plough through it.
Yeah.
He's just go through it. Where I kind of like, I've, you know, in my head is always, like, you know, talking and speaking, and I'm always, like, having conversations with myself about everything. Like, there's villagers, there's guest roles, just everything goes on in my head, you know, basically.
Yeah. But for you, you've taken a little bit of a step back from perhaps being as much in public yourself, like on Instagram or whatever, and you've talked about your fibromyalgia and your mental health.
Yeah,
a lot.
I think it's now about, I put something up at Christmas to do it to Panto, because there was pressure to do it, really, and I was really proud of the show, and I wanted to put clips up. But other than that, it's been now about 16 months that I haven't been on social media.
Wow.
And it just happened that I went to put something up, and it was a smiley picture of myself. And I stopped and I went, why am I putting this picture up? I'm not in a good mood. And am I going to make somebody think, oh, that Karl Broderick has everything, and look at him smiling on a Tuesday? And I went, I don't want to be making somebody else feel a bit crap. Because, like, I'd go on and I'd see somebody dancing in their living room on a Monday morning, and I'd kind of go, oh, I'm moving on from that. Like, who's that happy? And that might make me feel a bit bad. So I didn't want to perpetuate that on somebody by putting up a picture which was sort of saying my life is great and happy, and when it wasn't, so it was a lie. And once I said why, I went with the next picture a day or so later, and I went, why? And it seemed to be the only reason I was posting, or could be posting, or anyone was posting, was it has to be a sense of boasting. I couldn't once I asked why, picture after picture, post after post after post, I couldn't answer why I was posting.
Would it have also been because behind the smiley Karl, there was so much going on with how you were feeling, and also mentally and physically?
Yeah, I guess I did didn't want to be somebody who put that up. I didn't want to be somebody who moaned. My dad told me years ago, and it's probably a bad bit of advice, but he sort of told me, like, if you moan too much and if you go on about something, people will kind of listen, he said. And he goes, the next time you see them, they'll kind of listen. He goes, and the next time they see you, they'll probably turn the corner first because you're a moan. And I think I didn't want to ever be that person, and specifically in life, but certainly not online. So I didn't want to put me moaning or me being upset or online and bring people down. And yet I wasn't happy, so I couldn't put happy out either. So once the why came in, I didn't have a reason why I was putting stuff up. What was I trying to
achieve?
What was I trying to get,
or say?
What was I trying to do? Unless I was helping people or giving, like sometimes I'd put up pictures of my little sister and people would say that she'd make you smile and that, oh, that's brightened my day.
Yeah.
And that would be something that I've often thought about. I've often thought, well, maybe these people aren't getting their smile anymore because I'm not posting Joe anymore, you know. But yeah, so I just, once I started questioning why I was doing it, I felt I couldn't answer the why. And then I kind of felt, okay, unless I'm sort of like in front of the Eiffel Tower with Celine Dion 2 feet in front of me or something, and it's reasonable or it's worthy to do it, then yeah. And I just like, a funny thing was, a couple of years ago we got to go to Sri Lanka, and we went with Turkish Airlines. And you know the way when you're in the media, like Turkish Airlines were like, oh, we'd love to send you.
Yeah.
Or not send you, but you know, up you to first class.
Yeah.
And that was great.
Just make sure you post it.
Yeah, go make sure you post it. And then I was kind of aware of everybody at home and, you know, the economy and everything, just a couple of years ago. And so the whole way over, just couldn't take the picture. I just couldn't take the picture of us. I couldn't do us in first class clinking the champagne glasses. So we didn't do it. And then on the way back, there was pressure to do it. We had to get this picture. And then, so we both fell asleep. And then we were woken up in the middle of the trip. And I looked out the window at all these Emirates airplanes. And a man had a heart attack on the plane. And they'd diverted the plane in the middle of the night to Dubai. So all of a sudden we're in Dubai and we're going, what the hell? And so I woke Alan up and I said to the air stewardess, is the man fine? She goes, yeah, it was just, you know, precautions. We wanted to get him landed. So I went to Alan, wake up. So there we are, we're like bedhead, head akimbo. And then I took the picture. And I put the picture up, but instead of like, oh, look, here we are, I wanted to sort of say, oh, look, God, a man almost had a heart attack on our flight and we've just landed in Dubai or whatever. And everybody, so the focus was slightly off. So everybody was like, oh my God, I hope the man's okay. But there was still people going, look at the two of you in first class. And I was like, okay. I can't win. Yeah. I can't win. Yeah.
Do you think as well, like, you've talked a lot, like, recently about your mental health and depression. How are you now?
You know something? People always said to me online, like, you know, when I'd say stuff that, oh my God, I was helping others or I was brave and stuff. And then like other people would ask me to talk on situations like this. And Alan would go, why don't you do it? And I said, I feel I can't do it until I'm better. And I've said, and I can give hope to people and go, I was there and I've sort of come through it. I felt I can't go on something while I'm not better, and there's no hope for somebody. So I felt I couldn't really justify mouthing off about it when I wasn't well. I think the state of the mental health in this country is absolutely appalling. It's disgraceful, I have to say.
Across the board.
Yeah. Everywhere. But it's bad,
You know, it is. And I mean, I think, you know, look, that's for a different conversation, but services and access to services and waiting lists and,
huge suicide rates in this country and everything. It's terrible.
There are. And it goes from the younger ages right up, unfortunately.
I don't think, I mean, if anybody ever say, would you go back in time? I would not want to be a young person today. It's a very scary time, I think. You know,
it's for you. I mean, there's been a lot about mental health in discussions and in print and online and whatever, and people talk about it a lot more. But do you still feel that we're a bit blasé with how we use the word depressed or depressing? It's like, oh, the way it's lashed me out. God, so depressing. That's like saying you've the flu when you've really a bad cold, isn't it?
I don't know.
Or not.
I think that might just come down to language. I think the tone you use about it maybe. Like we can all say, oh, I'm in bits or I'm depressed or whatever. And I think we understand that. I think sometimes the people who are genuinely depressed are the ones who won't say that.
Anything. Yeah.
I only eventually start telling people a couple of years ago when we were going to this event, and it was in a hotel, and it was a launch of a hotel, and we were upstairs and they'd given us a room. And I just felt so low that I couldn't go down to the reception. It just felt... It felt like walking out the door and walking down the street felt difficult, but to go into just an event. And so Alan came back. I couldn't go downstairs. And Alan went down, and the event had started at like 6 o'clock. And then Alan came back up about 6:30, and he said to me, will you just come down for one picture? They just want to get a picture of us both together, and then you can come back up. But for me, that was like asking me to climb Mount Everest. It seems so stupid because it wasn't just go down. I was sitting there like bedhead. To me, it was like, I have to get photo ready. I have to get ready to go down and face people. So I did it. And I went down, and Alan's great at pushing me. He really is, because I think I would, a lot of the time, would do nothing if it wasn't for him, except for just work stuff that I have to do. So I went down and I did the picture. And then I had a glass of champagne or whatever, a glass of Prosecco or something, and I felt a bit better. But I walked over to this group of people, and they had known that I wasn't coming. And I went, oh, here's the diva. And something went off in my head that it was the first time I told people, because I wasn't going to accept
Sugarcoated
that.
with it.
I wasn't going to accept that I'd been a diva. I really, because it's so not me, that I was not going to be tired with something that wasn't me. So I told people, and they kind of like went, oh my God, like I never expected that from you. And it's because, like, I was always told, if you're going to turn up, you turn up and you bring it. And again, going back to my dad, you don't moan about it because people get tired of it. So you bring it. And then I'd go home and I'd be exhausted. And so this was the first time I kind of really started to tell people. And I quite was okay with their reaction, because all of a sudden I felt a little bit like, maybe I'll get a little breather or something. But I'm certainly not going to be called a diva. Just, you know what I mean? For not coming down when I was having a bit of a breakdown up in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that... So... If you go back to little Karl.
Yeah, little Karl, yeah.
What was little Karl like?
Little Karl was always doing stuff. I was always like into stuff. I was always like all the night. Like my mum said something recently, recently, God, she's dead 11 years. But she said something like, my younger sister is 13 months younger than me. She's wonderful, but she was like my shadow, but also like sort of this great person standing behind me to push me forward. And but my mum said something like, all the neighbours remember you, all the old neighbours. They don't really remember Anne. And it was just that I'd be gone, and my mum would be like, where am I? And I'd be in like the woman's house 2 doors down, and she'd been making me an outfit or something that I wanted to do a play with. And I was just really kind of, I was kind of like chatty to people, but not really ever good in a group. Like somebody said once, somebody said once that their mum said to him, what's Karl like? And he said, Karl's the kind of guy that if he was on Big Brother, he'd probably win it. And I went, God, he doesn't know me at all, because I wouldn't be any good in that. I wouldn't be any good with more than 2 or 3 people. And I certainly wouldn't be good with manoeuvring my way around that. That would be so bad. So I was always good with like going and sitting in like a neighbour's house with sort of a granny or type of thing, that sort of thing. And I was great. My own granny was wonderful. And
because she brought you up in a lot of ways, like she lived with you, and your family.
Amazing. Yeah, my granny was my dad's mother, and they didn't get on. but my granny lived in our house. So that was a little tricky because my granny would like arrive home from work and not really talk to my dad and not really talk to my mum, but she talked to me, and it was just trying to kind of keep it all moving along. And I remember definitely being a diplomat as best I could be, but she was great. She was real funny and naive and silly. And she worked until she was like 86 or something. And then she moved out of the house when she was 84 because the job she had took 2 buses and it was getting too much for her. So at 84, she moved into town, so she needed to get 1 bus up to Fitzwilliam Square, where we lived in Artane, and took 2 buses. So she moved out at like 84 into this sort of terrible bedsit, which broke my heart. But then I started working, and I was working in Abbey Street and she was in Marlborough Street, so I'd go down every lunch break and stuff. So we were closer again, physically. But we were always close, but she didn't get on with my dad. And partly because when she had a loss, when she was a young mother, she lost my dad's little brother, Billy. And all the kids were dropping down dead of meningitis. But my dad was 7 and Billy was 4. And the doctor just told my granny to put Billy back into bed, that he'd be fine. And my dad was sort of very autistic and very intelligent in his own way. And my dad knew that was the wrong thing to do. And then Billy died. And so my dad was very angry. And then a while later, my granny, who sort of shut down, and my granny then told my dad that the wrong one died. So my dad basically kind of from age 10, 12 raised himself. My granny basically stayed out of the home as much as she possibly could. She'd go to work. She didn't want to come back to the house. She'd go visit relatives. She'd come back very late at night. My dad sort of basically raised himself. And then the thing is, then when I was born, I looked like Billy. So everyone basically said to my mother, I think you need to have another kid because he's gone. So my granny basically took me. I was like the golden child, which then caused huge weirdness with because my dad was like incredibly jealous. So he didn't much appreciate me being so close to my granny.
Yeah, but you're only a kid,
Yeah, you know something. He probably could have hid it better, but you can't help. Nobody wants to feel jealous. Nobody wants that, but he just was so much that. Like, they just didn't talk. And my granny would arrive in and they just wouldn't say anything. But she'd arrive in and she'd like throw him a bottle of red wine. Yeah. But not talk. And he'd go, and put the red wine down. And
it's so
weird.
sad because it's obviously the community, the ability to communicate their loss and their grief and their feelings of their loss just wasn't there.
I think in those days, people just had to move on. There was no
got on with
therapy.
it. No.
Imagine like a 7-year-old and his like 4-year-old brother is his best little pal is gone. And then your mother just shuts down and your mother just basically stays out of the house as much as possible. And my mother, or my granny's sister, and Bessie and her family lived next door. They lived in Merrion Square. So they lived next door. So my dad came home from school and kind of mucked in with his cousins and Bessie, really, while my granny stayed away as much as possible, really. So, and then my mother, funnily enough, had a problem then with my granny for having done that to my father. She sort of felt protective of my dad and felt your dad never had a childhood. And so my mum and my dad were not really great with my granny, and then I was my granny. I worshipped the granny she walked on, and it's all in the same house, and it was
and you were and she was your to lose her was
oh my god,
just
that was
devastating.
Yeah, she was amazing. Like she was hit by a car when she was like 87, and she was actually going up to my mum's to bring my mum Ponston. Do you remember all the women in the neighbourhood would like swap all these drugs with each other and stuff? And my mum had like a flu or whatever. So my granny was bringing up Ponston, and my granny dropped into the chipper, and she left the chipper, and it was 7:30 on a December 5th. So it was quite dark, and a guy pulled out without putting his headlights on. So he hit my granny. So my granny ended up in hospital and up in Blanchardstown. And then that's how I started driving, because I was like, oh my God, 2 buses up to Blanch. And then I started driving. And yeah, and then she came out, and when she came out, then she was never the same again. But she was still humorous and still funny. And then when she came out, I got her one of those old folks flats. You know where they live in the
Like sheltered
no, not
accommodation.
yeah. They're you know they're like actually their own houses. There's no even on call people or anything.
Assisted living.
Yeah,
That's
and so I got her one of those, but it was next door to the said sister Bessie, her sister Bessie, who's now an elderly lady. So they live next door in number 1 and number 2 in these little houses, which I thought was like brilliant. And it took a lot of pressure off me because, you know, I constantly felt the need to be there for her, because all of a sudden now she wasn't working, which she always did. She never stayed in the house. As I said with my dad, she was always gone. But so we'd go down all the time since I met Alan, and Alan would go into the kitchen and he'd start tidying up, and I'd sit down with my granny and she'd be like, it's not one grandson I have now, it's 2.
Oh,
and so he knew her for 7 years now before she passed, and I that is not lost on me. That I've always appreciated that Alan knew her and she knew him, and he got her and he thought she was like funny and hilarious, because she was like this young person in an older person's body. Like, you'd be on the bus with my granny and she'd see like an older person who'd probably be like younger than her, and she'd go, look at Alan's hat or something, and you'd be like mortified and go, stop. But like, she just didn't see herself as old. And like, when we were kids, my granny would have been like something like, I think 70 when I was born, 67 or something when I was born. She was 93 when she died. But she was the one who introduced me to music, and she was the one who'd have like, you know, the old kind of suitcase record player that opened up, and we'd sit on the floor and she'd play like Blondie and ABBA and Adam and the Ants, and she'd be the one that I'd watch the Eurovision with, or I'd watch Miss World with, and we'd be like, who's going to win like Miss World? They obviously didn't know I was gay at all. But yeah, and the funny thing was that she worshipped me so much that like some neighbours would say things like, you have him spoiled, like he'll come to nothing, he'll be sleeping on park benches when he grows up. And I remember like being heavily insulted by that, thinking that's shocking. Like, but obviously, thank God that didn't happen. But yeah, she was amazing. And then unfortunately, then one day I was actually we're doing Panto, and I got a call as her next of kin that she'd woken up that morning and she'd gone blind, and she'd been taken to her home help had come in, and she'd been taken to Vincent's. So I went out to Vincent's and they said, you know, we don't know really what's going on. And then a week or 2 later, they said, look, there's not much we could do with her. We have to just release her. And I was like, release her? But she lives alone. And then they were like, well, can you take her? And I was like, I'm in the middle of Panto. Yeah, well, what'll I do? And then I was like to Alan, we need to sort of stop the Panto, which wasn't reasonable. I mean, you can't do that. You have a cast, you have a crew, you have people who've bought tickets. And so I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And my mum and dad had never, you know, been gone with my granny. And my granny didn't make it easy on them either, you know. So they weren't in a position to take her. And they had my little sister who's Down syndrome, Jo, as well. So they said, look, she's to go into this home. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. That's easy for me to say. And then I agreed to go and look at it. And I went into the home, which was kind of like a state-run old person's home. And I walked in and I looked around it and I left. Alan came with me and I was like, absolutely not, absolutely not. And then it came that she was being released from hospital and I was still in Panto, but I was finishing Panto the week later. And the thing was, okay, I'd let her go into this home, and each Panto was on at like 6:30 at night. So I'd go down at 9 o'clock in the morning and I'd pick my granny up and I'd bring her to the house and she'd be with me all day. And then on the way into Panto at 6:30, I'd bring my granny back to the home. So it was keep her out as much as possible. And it was just until I finished the Panto. So on the Saturday, I went in to see my granny, and the Panto was 3. So I was on the way in and to the Panto and I went to see my granny, and it looked like she was drooling and she wasn't really speaking. And she was in a chair. And so I called the people who run the place over and we got my granny into bed. And my granny had already gone blind at this stage. And she just kept falling asleep. And I was sitting there holding her hand. And I was sitting there like quietly bawling. But not allow myself to do any of the noises that come with that. And so she'd wake up every so often and she'd go, Karl, Karl. And I'd go, I'm here. And I was like trying to be as peppy as possible and go like, crying like, you know. And then that night at 10:30, they came in and they said, look, you have to leave. And I said, I can't leave her. She keeps waking up every few minutes and calling for me. And they said, well, you can't stay with her 24/7. You'll have to pace yourself because, you know, like with cancer. And I went, cancer? Yeah. Nobody told me about cancer. So I found out she'd cancer that way. And they told me, look, you won't be able to stay by our bedside constantly. So they told me to leave, which seemed sensible. And I left. And then at 3:30 that morning, they phoned me to say she died. And I've never got over that. I've so much anger about that. So I will be coming every week for therapy with you, Venetia, because I have never got over that one.
You paint such a beautiful, fun... She actually reminds me a lot of my granny in a lot of ways.
Grannies are great.
Yeah, just in the sort of, you know, the way they just... Your granny sounds as though she was someone who just commanded the stage in a way, but in a very sort of
Oh yeah, she was
pushy
never.
way.
She was never.
There. She was
never
present.
Showy, but she was girly and giggly. And she just kind of matched my age. Like it just always felt like we'd go to the pictures together and we'd go and see. And then it's so funny because
she was your person.
She was my person. And then you kind of think, I remember one time when she mentioned something like Sophie's Choice. And I was like, oh, you went to see Sophie's Choice? And she sort of says like, yeah. And then I remember feeling so sad because I was getting to that age where I wasn't doing the very small kiddie things with her. And I remember that's why I even hated school, because up to start at school, I was brought with her everywhere. And now all of a sudden I had to go to school. And that was like...
Interrupting your granny time.
Interrupting my social life with my granny, you know.
You were with your granny when you got your first... You experienced your first bereavement.
Yeah, I was actually in my granny's and the phone rang and my granny answered and it was my mum. And my granny says, you know, it's your ma. And I got on the phone and she just said, Michelle is dead. And Michelle was my childhood friend, one of my best childhood friends. And there was no pause. It wasn't even a pause to take a deep breath. I just fell to my knees, crying, blubbering. I remember just the well of emotion that came out, the shock. It wasn't even shock. It was just deep sadness. And Michelle had taken her own life by suicide. She was 21. She was a nurse. And yeah, it was just, definitely such a horrible thing to hear at the other end of the phone. And my granny's like, what's going on? Because my granny didn't know the situation. And I'm there on the phone, on the floor, literally going, oh my God. Yeah. And then like suicide is a very...
It's very complex.
It is, because you're scared. You're sorry. Should you have helped? And then you're angry at the person, because sometimes when I've ever thought about doing something like that in a dramatic moment, I've always thought I could never do it to the people around me. And seeing her parents breaking their heart over her coffin and stuff was a hard one, because there's Michelle lying there, and you kind of want to, I don't know, I don't know, it's different than regular deaths. It just is. And and so
there's so many emotions.
There really
that
is,
go with it. Like there can be guilt. There can be anger.
Yeah.
You know, this trauma, because it's so sudden and oftentimes unexpected as well.
Yeah, and then you're trying to find out the information as well. And you're talking now 30 years ago. And again, it still was that. It's terrible to say it, but there was a stigma with suicide. And you're trying to find out, but how do you ask questions? And how do you find out exactly what happened? And I met Michelle's sister, Sandra, there a while ago, and I was still trying to kind of eke out more information. And Sandra was like, you do know what happened. And it was just still, you just go, I don't know why the person did it, how they could do it to people, and should I have seen it and stopped it. So, and then you're aware of every suicide from then on. Like suicides in your life, and in Ireland it's very prevalent, you know.
It is.
And in every childhood memory then you think of Michelle's in it, and it becomes bittersweet.
Yeah.
Which is a strange thing, because you remember going fishing, or because Michelle was a bit of a tomboy, and you remember climbing trees, and I remember, like, I shouldn't laugh, but one time we were doing this thing where, you know, we had like a rope from a tree. And you're supposed to sit on the thing. Like the rope comes from a branch, and you climb up the tree, and you're supposed to sit on the bar. So you put your legs over
like
the bar.
a swing.
Yes. And you jump off
that you stand on.
Michelle decided to hold on to the bar, which meant when she hit the ground, she wasn't high enough. She basically just jumped out of the tree. And like, I remember, like, she wasn't hurt, but it was the funniest thing ever. Because when you were sitting on it, you were only about 2 foot off the ground. So if you held on to the bar, you were going to go onto the ground. And it's kind of, you know, but it took a long time to think of things like that without not wanting to think about them. So you didn't really think about your childhood. You didn't think about your childhood really, because it had those bittersweet
memories,
tinges or whatever. Yeah. But you get past it, you know.
Your mum, Una.
My mum was unintentionally funny. My mum was gas. I tell you a story I told at Anna's funeral. One time my mum came down the stairs, and it was Sunday. She always took her nap on a Sunday. And she came down the stairs, and we're watching a TV programme on Sunday afternoon, and she says, "What's that now?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's called The Borrowers." And she went, "Really?" I says, "Yeah, they're like little people, and they're like, you know, only about 6 inches high, and they borrow stuff around other people's homes, like a thimble would be a hat." And I said, "And you see that girl there, that actress?" And my mum says, "Yeah." I said, "You know Liz MacDonald in Coronation Street? Well, that's her daughter." And my mum goes, "And she's only that big?" Seriously? I swear, my mum was like, you know, and then people say, "How do you write panto?" And I go, "I just listen to people," because like...
So which character is Una?
You know, it's just that sense of... But even in the hospital, like, because I might know people, but she probably boasted about me, or maybe they saw me coming up to visit her. But I'll meet people. I met people at a Steps concert, and they came over and they went, "I was in the same ward with your mum." And it's happened to me 3 times. 3 different women have come up to me and said, "I was in the ward with your mum." And she's very funny. She was very funny.
Yeah.
And she was, because I remember, like, my dad had VHI from, like, he worked in aircom for years. And so when my mum went into hospital, she wasn't in, like, you know, the private room. She was in the regular room. And one day I went in, and she was halfway through. She was being wheeled out of the room because they figured out she had VHI and she was meant to go to a different room. But she was like, "Put me back. She wanted to stay where she was.
Yeah.
Because she liked the people. And she was it's a very Broderick thing. We don't like change. So she was comfortable there. She's by the window. She knew where she was. And then she got sick, and she got cancer. And she seemed very okay with it. I remember going up, and she just said, like, "I'm not in any pain." And I just think, I can imagine if you're ever in pain and you suddenly get out of pain, sometimes you probably don't care where you are. And she was just happy to be out of pain. And I think eventually then she was 70, and now she was a heavy smoker her whole life, which I hated for her. Excuse me. But when she was told she had cancer, she gave it up that moment and never went on them again. Like, it wasn't even any weaning off. It was just strange. She just stopped. And I remember she was in the hospital, and they told her, like, you know, she didn't have much time left. And I says, "Ma'am, they'll want you to go to a hospice." And she went, "I'm happy here." And I says, "Ma'am, but they want you to go to the hospice." And she went, "They're not going to throw me out on the street." So she was staying where she was. And then when we knew she was going to pass, she just said to myself and my sister, she said, look after each other. And that was a very, it seems such a small thing to say, but for me it's a huge thing. And when I see families maybe arguing or falling out, and we were very close anyway, and I always felt I looked after my sister, my little sister, and just not being the man of the house, but whatever. But my dad's quite an unsociable person. I definitely think he was very much undiagnosed autism, and he was very distant. And so I always felt I was the one that, if, like, when my sister got divorced, like, you know, it wasn't even a sense that my dad would step in or help or whatever. It was just, he just was awkward. It's like when my mum passed away and I had brought my dad to the supermarket for the first time in his life. He literally walked around the supermarket at the start of the supermarket with 50 quid in his hand, and he had the very corner edge of the 50 quid with the 50 quid flapping, and he walked around the supermarket like that. Yeah, I'll put them in the trolley. Yeah, I'll have them.
Yeah.
My mum had done everything for him.
Yeah.
I don't think the man had to.
Different generations.
We always got money. We never got presents. Like, he'd never shop. But so it was just kind of like look after each other when my mum passed, and then that was my mum gone, and that was
She
it.
got to see you two get married.
Oh, she did. And the funny thing was, I've always wanted to tell this. My mum didn't like the idea really of us getting married, and we were just going to do it very quietly. And I phoned her, and she was very quiet on the phone. And myself and Alan would never do anything publicity wise, and sometimes we really needed it for the Panto, and the likes of the Sunday Indo would come along and say, we do a spread on you and Alan. And we were like, no, because we always thought we're isolated in this show busy world. But my dad's doing the local pub, and that's where we were thinking, and Alan's family live in Ballyfermot and stuff, and we just did, I don't know, wrongly, I didn't want to see us spread over the mirror or the star, so we kept it very, very low together profile. And then my mum said, like, why do you have to do that about getting married? So she kind of ruined the engagement. And then Alan said, this was Saturday, and Alan said, on Monday when I go back on air on Ireland AM, he said, it would be odd for me not to say, when we're talking around, him and Mark Cagney, who we both love, would be saying, like, what happened over the weekend? And if Mark knew anyway, he'd be cheeky and try to bring it up, if you remember, if you know Mark. And so I'm kind of like, I would have instantly went, no. But because my mum had been, I did it despite her. And I went, yes, because I was annoyed. Yeah. So Alan went on air on that Monday morning, and he told people. And I woke up to like sort of 28 text messages. I know the first one was from Dustin the Turkey, who I'm sure you know who he is. I won't out the man. But yeah, it was like, good on you. And I was like, okay, so it's out. And every journalist that we got interviewed by after that was like, was there a lashback or and every journalist asked that question, and there wasn't. There really wasn't. And I know it sounds weird, but that was like, let's do the wedding we want to do. But my mum was like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this showy wedding? And then VIP Magazine asked us to do VIP Magazine. And I didn't want to. We didn't even have a videographer in it. I didn't want anybody feeling uncomfortable or that they had to mind themselves on the day because we were going to end up in VIP Magazine. I just didn't want that. But then we'd people like drag queens and stuff performing for us, and people like Davina Divine and Victoria's Secret, and they're wonderful people. But I was like, how might that look? Does it look like I'm? No, it's okay to be friends with people in dresses, but I wasn't friends with people in dresses. So, and I had a very weird responsibility to show the normality and blandness of us just getting married. I just didn't want anybody trying to make it into something it wasn't. So,
but you shouldn't have to feel like that.
I know. And then when VIP Magazine said we could choose every picture, and they were like we get like everybody will get pictures anyway of people just arriving, and so because I could choose every picture, we agreed to do the VIP magazine. But where I'm going with that is my mother was like, well, I'm not going to be in that magazine, and why are you doing that? Then on the day, she loved it all. But she never had come back to me to say that she'd like to be in the magazine.
Oh, no.
So I kept her out of the magazine.
Oh, no.
And then she said, all the neighbours are coming up saying it's wonderful, but where are you, Una? And then I felt awful.
That's quite funny.
I felt awful because I never got to tell everybody. I did. Everybody's going, oh, Karl Broderick didn't put his mother in the magazine. I mean, how must it have looked? And so they did a second one. They did a second part because it was so popular. And I put her in that. And nobody bought the second one. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. So she was a typical maybe Irish mammy in a way.
Yeah.
She was very scared. And a lot of the time, with being gay and being out and showing us as the most normal people has never often been about the gay people. It's been about families who worry sick what their child's going into or what's going to happen to them. And an awful lot of people will message us and say, like, my daughter's like come out to me as lesbian, but she swore me to tell no one else. So now the mother is going around with it. Or a mother messaged me a while ago to say that her 15-year-old sort of came out, but there's no father in the house. And the 18-year-old's the real man of the house. And he's really homophobic. So the 15-year-old was going back in the closet quicker than he was coming out. And she was like, what do I do? And I was like, oh, you just have to sort of ask the guy. A lot of people feel they've got to wait for people to come out. I think just ask them. Because if they're straight, they'll go back to their cornflakes and have a giggle. And if they're gay, it could change their life. But everybody waiting. I've known people who were 35 and the family knew and they knew and nobody was talking about it. Yeah,
but I do not think now, like, I mean, if you think back in generations where it was illegal.
Well, it was illegal. It was illegal when myself and Alan met, yeah.
And then, now, like, people are much more open. Like, there's much more...
people can't get... every straight person I talk to and tell them that there are still people in the closet, they're shocked. And people who are in the closet and I tell them this, they say stuff like this one guy who said that he works on a construction site. And he says, you wouldn't believe the homophobicness of the guys on the construction site. He goes, how can I come out? And that his family wouldn't accept it. And I'm going, okay. So that's a 35-year-old now who's not going to come out. He is not going to lead the life that's his. He's going to lead a different life. And he could end up affecting other people in a bad way. And also he could probably affect people in a good way. Because there's a lot of good things that come from sometimes mammies. Sometimes I go, that mammy's good. Has looked out now having that gay son or that gay daughter, because they just sometimes get introduced to something a little different.
Yeah. Do you think so? Sometimes, though, it is the fear, I think, of the unknown. People are, or it's not, because I suppose some people and some people that are parents and your kids, you have your kids and then there's something, and what they had seen as their path isn't their path. Yeah,
what I found is there's two things. I found an awful lot of people don't come out because they don't want to bring something bad to the home. Maybe their sibling had been sick and the family went through something traumatic. Maybe there was an unmarried pregnancy in the teenage years and they saw the family fall apart. They don't want to bring anything. And I also think of the first 30 seconds and they think of like telling the mother and then the mother dropping dead. They don't think past 30 minutes later when you're sitting down to have a cup of tea. They sort of get stuck in that
first 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then also as well, if people keep it going on too long, it's more about, oh, I lied about that. Oh, I dated that girl. Oh, I pretended there. And so it's not like I'm gay, but it's like I'm a liar. I'm 35 and I've been lying all those times. I wasn't going here when and so sometimes it becomes not about being gay, but that I'm outing myself that I've lied to you for 30 years of my life. And that can get people stuck.
Yeah, but I think ultimately, you've got to walk in other people's shoes.
Yeah.
And you've got to see what it might have been like for them to have to feel that way for so long and to have to live that life when it wasn't their life.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I feel we stand on the shoulders of giants, because I think of history as like, if you think of history as one line, and all that line is made up of dots, like a pencil dot is each line. We're in one dot.
Mm.
And we're so lucky. And the people who just slightly went before us and who came before us, who fought for everything that we have. And then there's younger people who just don't even seem to know the history, and I just think it's very important. And then there's all these people out there who seem to be obsessed with, like in America and stuff, how have they the time? People's lives are busy. People are struggling.
I don't know.
Banning drag queens from reading books to kids. Who gets to that on your list of 100 top things to be worried about?
Yeah, things to do before you die.
Yeah.
Your dad, Paddy, who you lost in February 2025, so not that long ago at all.
No.
How was he?
He was very quiet and very understated and very, I think, autistic. And he didn't say much, but he gave us this great love gave myself and my sister a great love of movies. Like, you would not want to watch a movie with me because I do exactly what my dad does. I'm there going, and you see that actress? She was married to such and such actress.
Oh, yeah, I do
and
that.
they had 2 kids. And Alan says I'm full of useless information.
Yeah, but that's you're probably good at pub quizzes too.
Oh, brilliant at pub quizzes.
We start a team.
Yeah, except geography. I had to call a friend for geography because I come out of a building. I'll come out of Arnott and I'll go down Henry Street instead of going up Henry Street where I meant to go. I'm that bad.
But you lost him. He was obviously he was accepting. He was
very accepting because when my dad was originally sick, it was about 10 years earlier, and he had actually died because he needed a liver transplant. So I was in Sitges and I get a call to say that my dad is dead. And I'm in Sitges with Alan and I'm trying to get the next plane home. 40 minutes later, my sister phones says, it's a false alarm. He's alive again. He died. And the funny thing was that my sister said, my mum turned around and said, rather than worrying about my dad, she was like, I'm not staying in that house he'll haunted. I'm coming to live with you or Karl. And that was her plan. So then he popped back alive again because he'd had a then he got a liver transplant. And then the liver transplant was supposed to be just 10 years at the best. And he was kind of he knew he was on borrowed time. I used to say, he goes, I'm trespassing now.
Oh.
And so when my mum passed away and he was still alive, and then my little sister, who's Down syndrome Jo, lived with him, and she went into care, sort of into assisted living, which is wonderful. And it's just down the road. And it's actually in a house that across the road from our local shops. And when I was a kid, my mum went, St. Michael's House bought that house. It'd be great if Josephine ever got in there. So, yeah, so my dad then was living on his own, and he'd pop down to Jo and just he did his thing, and he did his horse bets and stuff like that. And then eventually just delivered then and he was very accepting of it. Yeah. I think he always thought he was 78, and I think he came from he was a townie. My dad was a townie. And all the townies kind of know each other. I could walk into a pub now and they'd all stare at me. My dad could walk in and they just all know each other in a way. So I think a lot of those people were very hard drinking and hard. And I think a lot of them died in their 60s. And I don't think my dad ever thought, because he was such a hard drinker. And the thing was, one time I asked him why he drank so much. And one of the very few conversations we had, and he said, because when Billy died and then my granny was never there, and my dad was basically working from the age of 12, and he was so shy that he had to drink to be able to go to work and be around men. Yeah. So he actually said that's why he drank.
It's self-medicating.
Yeah, basically. So he'd been basically self-medicating for his entire life. Yeah. So I think he was definitely ready to go. And he always said he wanted to be cremated. And just before he passed away, and he was great until the last 24 hours. He was really sitting up in the bed and he was great. And I said to him, do you want to be cremated or do you want to be buried with Mum? And he went, oh, I don't mind. And I probably could have picked better words. I said, now, when you go down there, there'll be killings. Yeah. And a cheeky, impish smile on his face. Sometimes I see him in the mirror, my own face, doing it. And it's exactly the same. It's it was kind of funny. But yeah, he was kind of ready to go, yeah, and I think he was happy, yeah.
the two, yourself
Mhm.
and obviously Alan, like as we said at the beginning, you've been through so much.
Alan's been through so much, yeah, the
But you
siblings and
have,
stuff.
like, you know, and you have, and you sort of go, how do you support it? Like, inevitably, somebody's going to be having a bad day. Somebody's going to be having a day where the grief train just keeps coming. How do you support? Like, how
We
do you
support each
balance
other.
that support?
Do you know something? I don't know whether we necessarily do, because my mum passed away in July 2012, and Alan's sister Doreen,
Yeah.
who he adored, passed away in the April. And one of the things that really freaked me out was burial, and I don't know whether this is just icky, but the whole idea of going to a grave, I never got a pleasantness from that. And then I remember I was haunted by the idea of the decaying of, and why would I want to be 6 feet or whatever up on the ground with my mum? I couldn't get over that. And I just kept wanting to say to Alan, but I couldn't, because I didn't want, if he wasn't thinking about that, I didn't want to put those thoughts in his head about Doreen. So I remember that was one thing. And I couldn't say it to my sister either, because I didn't want to put her having thinking about it, because she liked going to the grave. So there was an awful lot of not talking about stuff. And like Alan's parents died when he was 10. Within like 6 months of each other. And sometimes everything that ever happens to me, that trumps everything in a way. Do you know? So it does put you into perspective. And the weirdest thing is, I was coming along here in the car, and by weirdness, and talk about like the universe and everything, there was a little girl in the car opposite, and she kept waving over at me. And the lady in the car, and I wasn't going to talk to it was an Uber driver, a lady Uber driver. I wasn't going to talk to her because I had my earphones and I'm working on this project, this song. And I was like, oh, I have 40 minutes to sit in the car and listen to the song and that I'm composing. But because the little girl was waving, the woman and myself started talking. And then the woman said it was her daughter's birthday, and she started crying. And then I was like, are you okay? And she says, yes. She goes, my husband died last September. Suddenly. And that he was the first to text her daughter, who wasn't his daughter. And I'm going, my goodness, now that is the universe. I mean, why? I'm on the way to do a podcast that's about kind of grieving and death. And I ended up speaking the whole way in about this woman, and that her husband had gone to get his some teeth, you know, when they're screwed in or whatever they're called. And it had got in a foreign country, and he'd got sepsis. And he came home, and like a typical man, he kept going, oh, I don't feel well, I'm being sick. I'll be grand. Just dropped dead on the doorstep. And she found him. And she was crying, but she was saying that she does feel him, because he always rubbed her left arm. And she says, I never feel it on the right arm, because he never rubbed the right arm, but she does feel him. And I've had a few little things like that, like when my mum passed and I asked for a white feather. And I'm tying my shoelaces at the sofa, and I said out loud, Mum, I want a white feather. Now, don't put it anywhere that I'll talk myself out of it, like near a pillow, or where I'll go, oh, that came in on my shoe or something. So it has to be somewhere, you know, away from everything. So tied my shoelaces, I went up to the funeral home, see my mum, came back, opened the living room door. There was nobody else in the house. Alan was with me, and there in the middle of the room was a white feather, dead centre in the middle of the room. Now, there's never been one there before, and there's never been one there since. I still have it. And everybody keeps saying you should have asked for £1 million.
But it is, I mean, I think anybody who's lost somebody who was probably really anti-signs and anti any of that, when they lose that person, or they lose a person, suddenly the signs mean everything.
Oh God! And my mum used to always say, again, my mum, well, what is it when certain people say, it's called a malprasm or something like that? What's it called? I'm doing it now. When they say a different word that means a word, like my mum would always go to me when I was a kid, you're psycho. You're definitely psycho. But she meant psychic. And then this one time when my friend Michelle died, I couldn't go to the grave. So a couple of months later, I went to the grave, and I tried to think where it might be. And it's starting to drizzly rain, and I'm walking around the grave site, and I'm trying to find Michelle's grave, and I couldn't. And then I said out loud, Michelle, it's going to rain. I've been 40 minutes trying to find you. Where are you? And with that total empty graveyard, way over there, this woman stood up. So I went and I skipped through all the different graves over to this woman. And she's the only woman in the graveyard. And I'm talking to the woman and I says, do you know where people who died in like this year might be buried? And she went, no. Now the reason she popped up was she was planting flowers on her husband's grave. So she popped, and she went, no, because people don't buy in the year they die. They might have a grave bought, a plot. So I'm talking to this woman for 10 minutes and her husband's name is Eddie. And she's trying to do Eddie with the flowers. And I'm going, maybe a big E might work better.
Yeah.
It's very hard to write Eddie on a grave. And so anyway, talking about Michelle. And eventually I say, oh, well, I better go. And as I went to go, I slightly caught out the corner of my eye and I was standing at Michelle's grave.
No.
I swear to good God. I went, oh my God, literally where
It
you
was
stand. So when I had said, Michelle, don't let me go home without finding you. I've been here 40 minutes now, it's going to rain. And the woman popped up. I walked 200 metres across a graveyard and stood directly at Michelle's grave. So I thought that was really weird. But you know the sad thing about that is, I went up again to Michelle's grave and that woman's name was added to the gravestone next to her. And I just, which was
so
really,
she was meant to be there.
No, but she was now on the grave. She was now dead.
I know, but when you went.
Yeah, but I just thought to myself, because it was like them and us. Yeah. They were them and me and her were us. Yeah. And she's them. And it felt like, oh God.
You're the only one there.
Yeah, it felt really weird, yeah.
You wrote a song for your dad's funeral.
I did. Because, and there's a line in the song which asks it, he sort of said to my sister, like, is Karl still writing the songs, you know? And my dad used to write songs, and my dad was a huge music fan. I mean, he would have given us our love for music.
Yeah.
I mean, he worshipped Elvis. And another funny thing is, he absolutely worshipped Marilyn Monroe. He'd photographs of Marilyn up like family photos. And in the week after my dad died, you know the way your phone, my phone's in my pocket, you know the way your phone can't go off in your pocket unless you open you'd put in the number. Yeah. It went off 3 times in one day, and I picked it up and it was on YouTube videos of Marilyn Monroe, which I never ever, I was like, how is it opening up? Because I've like a very fast, like if you don't touch your phone after 1 minute or something, it goes.
It locks, yeah.
Yeah, but it kept turning on and it was different Marilyn Monroe videos. So sometimes I'll be in the house and I'll turn on like a Western and I can't go, because if he's hovering around me, like in the TV show Ghost, I'm going, he could watch the Western. If he's here, they might have put something on he wants to watch. Yeah. Sometimes I think like that, you know.
But it's a beautiful song.
Oh,
so
thank you.
We're going to play it, I think, just out of the podcast. So people can listen to it.
He'd love that. My dad's Paddy Broderick. And yeah, he was as odd as 3 left feet. But that's why I think the song says, like, I think it's a brave life, because he was so ultimately shy. I don't think he ever achieved what he was meant to, because he just didn't have that parental support and everything. So I think he just did the best he could, really, you know.
Karl, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Venetia.
You so much.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know why I'm whispering. I wouldn't mind waking you up, but you've definitely gone for good. The one thing we wanted was for you not to be alone. We got to hold your hand till you were done. It was a brave life lived in your own time. Some called you crazy, you know they were right. You loved to dance, Elvis was king. You came alive at night. Music was everything. If there's such a thing as too generous, that's what you were. And I even tried